2021 has been great for third-person games, and there's still quite a few good ones on their way. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the third-person games you need to check out in 2021. Starting with number 20, it's the Dark Pictures anthology House of Ashes, from the creators of Until Dawn, one of the most interactive and branching horror games we've seen in quite a while. Their anthology series continues with the House of Ashes. Basically, the player controls 5 different characters that were investigating a Mesopotamian temple back in 2003 during the Iraq War, and they get hunted by monsters. Obviously, the string of games that came before it are very good, and we're looking forward to House of Ashes when it lands on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and PC on October 22nd. At number 19 is Samurai Warriors 5, which is a bit of a return to the roots of the Warriors series after Dynasty Warriors 9, which is a mess, an open world mess. Samurai Warriors 5 trims down the experience, brings in less characters, and overhauls the visuals in a more visual novel slash manga slash cartoony way that I think actually works pretty well. It also focuses on a somewhat smaller period of time that, again, for kind of reintroducing the Warrior series in its mainline entries, works pretty well. It's not a particularly groundbreaking version of this game, but it is an enjoyable, good game, which is more than I can say for Dynasty Warriors 9. Samurai Warriors 5 has been out since July. It's on PC, Xbox One, PS4, and Switch. At number 18 is Knockout City, a dodgeball competitive game in a large cityscape arena where players are separated into teams, and of course, there's a bunch of different special attacks that you can play dodgeball with. This is a game that started out good and continues to grow and get better, particularly in that there's a pretty dedicated player base at this point, and cross-play is enabled. Knockout City is out on Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. Give it a shot. At number 17 is Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, coming to us from Eidos Montreal and Square Enix. Now, the Square Enix published Avengers title was not so great, but this looks a little bit better in that it is purely a single-player game. It's not a live service game. It doesn't have any DLC. The whole thing is entirely story-driven. Now, that doesn't mean it's automatically good, but it does make a case that they understood why people hated Marvel's The Avengers. That's a good thing. Will it pan out? I don't know exactly, because the gameplay, honestly, I don't know, I didn't really hate it in Marvel's Avengers, but there were a lot of other factors that made it not great. Tie that in with a different developer and the fact they're kind of positioning this game as the anti-Avengers, the exact opposite. They know you don't like it, so try this one instead, game. I think it's at least going to be worth a spin. Guardians of the Galaxy lands on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, Windows, and Nintendo Switch on October 26th. At number 16 is Aragami 2, the sequel to a pretty interesting game that came out in 2016, an action-adventure stealth game where you controlled a shadow spirit who could teleport and use stealth to otherwise accomplish a number of interesting and fun missions. Aragami 2 looks to bring up the stakes a little bit, as well as create a little bit more dramatic of a story that's also perhaps a little bit more easy to understand. I enjoyed the original Aragami. It didn't get maybe as much praise as it should have, in my opinion, and I'll definitely be playing the sequel when it lands on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and PC on September 17th. At number 15 is Solar Ash, which I've been describing as Tony Hawk's Pro Breath of the Wild. And honestly, it's a game I've been looking forward to for quite a while. It comes from Heart Machine, the developers of Hyper Light Drifter, which is one of my favorite games, actually. And it looks to incorporate a lot of interesting mechanics. It's got a great color palette, and it looks like something at least somewhat different, while retaining elements of things that we all like from third-person action-adventure games. Solar Ash is releasing on PC, PS4, and PS5 on October 26th. At number 14 is Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, which is basically the PS5 version of what is really an amazing looking game. You can get the extra content on the PS4, but the reason for this is that the PS5 is a much more powerful system, and the game looks incredible on it. I don't know that there's really a lot to say. It's Ghost of Tsushima. It's one of the most well-received games the last several years, with good reason, and it looks even better and has more content. And number 13 is Scarlet Nexus, an action RPG that ultimately kind of takes a Dark Souls approach and also kind of doesn't. It takes place in an alternate reality where they've used science to create extrasensory superpowers and psychokinesis and link each other's brains. The lingo is honestly a little bit silly, but this game came out back in June and is definitely worth some of your time. It's got fantastic combat in it, and I think that that's really the best reason to give it a shot. I don't want to say it's perfect. There's a lot of games like this, but it does it really well. And its addition of telekinesis powers is a good one. Scarlet Nexus is out on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and Windows. Give it a shot. At number 12 is Hitman 3, which came out way back in January, but is absolutely worth mentioning here because A, it's the third game in the Hitman series, and the Hitman series is fantastic, but B, it brought a number of graphical improvements and mechanical improvements to the game that the definitive edition of previous games benefited from the existence of this game. It's really just a great collection of missions and progresses the story. It's Hitman. I would never not recommend a Hitman game as long as they kept doing it as well as they're doing it. It's out on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, Nintendo Switch, and PC. And number 11 is Monster Hunter Rise, the Nintendo Switch entry to the popular, now open world series. It continues a lot of the stuff that they came up with for Monster Hunter World, however adds a lot of verticality into the game. The name says it all. Really, it's just a great version of Monster Hunter. There's nothing to complain about here. I think that other than the fact that it's graphically not as good, it's a Switch game after all. The expectations aren't quite as high graphically. It is coming to PC early next year though, and I think the game itself is good enough that it merits a play either way. If you have a Switch and you like Monster Hunter, it's a no-brainer. And number 10 is Nier Replicant, which is the remastered and remade version of the original Nier game itself. I particularly like it because they brought in a more Nier Automata style combat system and overhauled some of the elements of the game itself, so it paces itself better. The enemies are still a lot easier and less complex than what you find in Nier Automata, but at least it plays more like that. The story is also really interesting. It introduced the bizarre way that it shifts through the various endings and drops twists on you the same way that Automata does, except for it happens much earlier in the timeline. It's a very interesting game. At number 9 is It Takes Two, which is a co-op platformer that sees two separating parents enchanted into dolls and having to figure out some way to get back to their kid who is possibly in danger. In some ways, it's kind of the platformer equivalent of A Way Out in that you cannot play this game with one player. You absolutely have to have two players. And all of the puzzles are built around that co-op mechanic. It's a very good game. It came out on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and PC back in March. It is definitely worth your time. At number 8 is Returnal. Now this has got a very strange alien aesthetic. It has kind of the Deathloop plot. You've crash landed on an alien planet, you investigate, you look at everything, and you probably die and then crash land on the planet again and you're caught in a loop. And it's actually completely wild because this world transforms itself based on what happens to you, and it's got this awesome semi-Cthulhu, semi-not type mythos going on. Honestly, it's a really good third-person roguelike that tries a lot of interesting things and succeeds at most of them. It came out back in April, it's a PlayStation 5 exclusive, and it's one I really enjoy. And number 7 is Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which gives you a package of all three of the Mass Effect games remastered, particularly the first one, with a lot of quality of life increases, as well as the ability to just experience the entire Mass Effect story on all the new consoles, even though it's optimized for PS4 and Xbox One. That of course means you can play it on the new generation consoles because they're fully backwards compatible with the last generation. It also landed on PC. This was back in May, and if you like Mass Effect or you're interested and maybe want to try Mass Effect, this is, of course, the best way to do it now. At number 6 is Valheim, this really great survival/sandbox game with a very cool, vibrant colorful world to occupy that launched in early access back in February. I mean, you have most of your survival staples like crafting, building shelters, fighting enemies, etc. But it has a very distinct style, not just in gameplay, but also in graphics that sets it apart from a lot of games in this genre. It's also got this really interesting food system, which I haven't really seen one with that kind of depth in any other game. Valheim is out, like I said, in early access on Microsoft Windows. It's definitely an interesting take on the genre. At number 5 is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, a PS5 exclusive that shows off some of the most interesting, cool features of the new hardware, specifically the ability to stream an entire world simultaneously, so all of this teleportation stuff that they couldn't really do on the previous generation. They did, and it looked amazing. They essentially used the game as a tech demo for the PS5, and it sold a lot of people on it. It came out back in June. It's also a great game. It continues the Ratchet and Clank franchise very well, and if you enjoy the kind of platformer that it is, I think you will enjoy this one. At number 4 is Psychonauts 2, which had a long and fraught development cycle, but of course, Psychonauts is a fantastic, enjoyable telekinesis, levitation, pyrokinesis power type platformer, and this sequel definitely delivers on the promise of bringing up the stakes from the original. Psychonauts 2 is out on PlayStation 4, the Xboxes, and Microsoft Windows. At number 3 is Little Devil Inside, a third-person action RPG with survival, open-world exploration, and of course, a pretty interesting-looking battle system, which is supposedly going to not be too difficult in terms of survival, however, wants to create a very distinct mission-oriented process. I don't know exactly what this is going to add up to, but I've always thought this game looked extremely interesting. It was supposed to come out in July, but it didn't, and I'm hoping we at least see it at some point this year. It's landing on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, Nintendo Switch, and Microsoft Windows whenever it does, and we look forward to it. And number 2 is Lost Judgment, the second in the Judgment spin-off series of Yakuza. The original Judgment is a fantastic game. If you remember way back when it came out, I did the Before You Buy on it. I thought it was a really worthwhile addition to the Yakuza canon, as well as did a lot of unique things on its own. Lost Judgment looks to up the ante as well as fix some of the elements, particularly stealth. At least that's what I've seen developers claim about it. I'm quite interested to see how it pans out, and I also just want to experience another story with the characters in the original. Lost Judgment is landing on the PlayStations, the Xboxes, and it's coming out September 24th. And finally, at number 1, it's Kena Bridge of Spirits, which comes to us from a developer that made its name on a Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask short film. You can see that influence very much on this game, except for they add the concept of little spirits and or familiars that you can give commands during combat. It's also gorgeous. It looks like a game that graphically I would want to experience regardless of genre. However, I'm interested in it from the perspective that it may take some of the ideas of Breath of the Wild and run in a different direction with them. Kena Bridge of Spirits is landing on PS4, PS5, and PC on September 21st. And a quick bonus for you, Alan Wake Remastered is coming to PlayStation 4 and 5, as well as Xbox Series X and S. It'll be coming on the Epic Games Store next month on October 5th. It's been a long time since I've played Alan Wake. I'm really looking forward to going through it again. Remastered, too. We've got one bonus game for you. It's Far Cry 6. The game is basically a anagram of some kind of revolutionary activity in Cuba. It's landing on pretty much every single platform on October 7th, and that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a good time because that's the best way to see our new videos, which we upload every single day. So don't forget to click subscribe and the notification bell. As always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.